Hi y'all, so I'm back in New York and I've been really wanting to start making content again. In light of everything that's going on, I wanted to make something that would hopefully be useful to you. So let's talk about the 2020 primaries in New York, and it's coming up on June 23rd. Surprise, it's not just the presidential primary, it's also when we're going to be voting for our local elected officials. This is so important because this is where your vote and my vote is going to count the most. There are more people challenging incumbent Democrats than ever before, and I'm going to be going over some of those congressional races, but those aren't the only races that are going to be going on. I'm not an expert, and neither are you, but we both have the internet, so before you vote, do me a favor. Go to ballotpedia.org, click on what's on your ballot, type in your address, select which election you want to look at. So for New Yorkers, that's the June 23rd, 2020 election, and then you're going to get a sample ballot, and you will be able to look into each of those candidates. In the Queens race for District Attorney, Tiffany Caban lost to Melinda Katz by 55 votes. So your vote really, really does count in these more local elections. With that being said, let's get into some of these congressional races. Congressional District 15 is going to be a really important and interesting one to watch. Jose Serrano is not running for re-election, so there are 12 Democrats running for his seat. Yeah, this one really scares me. I'm not going to go over all 12 because I don't think that you want me to do that. But at this point, there are 3 candidates that I've really been hearing a lot about, so I'm just going to go over those 3. According to a Data for Progress poll, there are 2 candidates who are essentially neck and neck. Polling in number 1 at 22% is Reverend Ruben Diaz Sr., and he's a Pentecostal reverend. He is homophobic, known for quotes like, "The city council is being controlled by the homosexual community." He also thinks that people who support the right to choose are murderers, assassins, and criminals. Basically, he's a Democrat in name only, and he's polling at number 1 because everyone else who's running is a Democrat and are splitting the votes between them. So polling at number 2 is Richie Torres. At the age of 25, he became New York City's youngest elected official and first openly LGBT person elected in the Bronx. I didn't do a deep dive into Torres. I looked at his website, and I really wish that he listed more of his policy issues and what he stood for. So the third person in this race who you may have heard some buzz about is Samalis Lopez. And Samalis was endorsed by Bernie Sanders. When Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez announced her new PAC that's supposed to be supporting progressive candidates, it's called Courage for Change, Samalis was one of the first people that AOC endorsed with that PAC. Samalis is part of Democratic Socialists of America. According to that Data for Progress poll, she's only polling at 2%. I'm really conflicted because I think of myself as a progressive, and it's difficult for me to compromise my ideals and vote for a non-progressive candidate, but I'm also really surprised that the Democratic candidates haven't kind of coalesced behind Richie since, at least as of May when this Data for Progress poll came out, Richie seemed to be the one who was most likely to beat Reverend Diaz Sr. It would hurt to have someone like Diaz taking a Democratic seat in Congress. We're finally at Congressional District 16, and this is the one that I've been most excited to talk about. But this is where Eliot Engel is running, and you may have heard his name recently because he went viral for saying this.
I didn't have a primary, I wouldn't care.
Say that again?
I didn't have a primary, I wouldn't care. No.
The context of that is it was a Black Lives Matter protest, and there was a list of people who wanted to talk, and obviously Eliot Engel he wanted to talk. He was asking if he could speak as well, and this guy was saying, his name was Diaz, according to the article that I read, he was saying that there might not be enough time for him to speak, and he said, if I didn't have a primary, I wouldn't care. And obviously that looks really bad. In my opinion, I don't think that moment looks as bad as his record. So let's dive into that. I do want to read this quote to you about him defending why he should hold this seat, that he's 73 years old and he's a 16-term incumbent. He said, "I've now had lots of seniority, being in Congress a long time, and I have the clout.
Oh, wow.
I bring home the bacon. I bring home the money. I can do those kinds of things. That's something a freshman can't do." So, obviously, after that, Nancy Pelosi endorsed him. I'm not even joking. But let's talk about his voting record. He voted in favor of the Iraq War. He voted in favor of the 1994 crime bill, which obviously so did Joe Biden, but just going to try not to think about that right now. He was in favor of No Child Left Behind. And the part that scares me about him the most is his alliance with arms contractors. He gets a lot of donations from these arms contractors like Lockheed and Boeing. That's just two examples. And then in the meantime, he is head of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. As head of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, he gets to make a lot of really important decisions, and he's very staunchly pro-Israel. These arms contractors like Lockheed and Boeing make the majority of their money from exporting weapons to Israel and also from our troops having a presence in Israel. Decisions that he's making in Congress are affecting his donors' pockets. And to me, that's a huge conflict of interest. I know it happens all the time, but it's just so incredibly frustrating, and I think that that's why we desperately need candidates who want to vote for money out of politics. One reason why I'm not feeling completely helpless even though it is 2020 and 2020 has felt pretty bleak, is because Jamal Bowman is running against Engel, and he's really gaining momentum. He has been endorsed by Bernie Sanders, I think Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez as well, also Progressive Change Campaign, and he's a Justice Democrat. And last night, as of when I'm recording this, I don't know exactly when I'm going to post this, he was endorsed by the New York Times. And I feel like progressives never get endorsed by the New York Times, but after Engel has messed up so much, I guess it makes sense. If you're in District 16, definitely check him out, but also look at who else is running. There's also Samuel Ravello and Chris Fink. So Congressional District 14 is obviously Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. At one point in the race, she had 13 challengers. It was 8 Republican and 5 Democratic challengers. Obviously, I'm living in my little liberal bubble, so I was like, I can't believe that someone would be challenging a candidate that has so much national popularity, let alone in her own district. But obviously, as much as there are some people who love her, there are also a lot of people who vehemently hate her. And I'm not saying that these candidates, the people running against her, hate her. She even said that she was like, yes, challenging incumbents is what primaries are for, is what we should do. We should always be looking for what could potentially be better for the district. And she got her seat by challenging a longtime incumbent Joe Crowley. The people challenging her are Michelle Caruso-Cabrera, Badram Khan, and Samuel Sloan. The mainstream media seems to think that Michelle has the biggest chance of unseating AOC. She's a journalist. She was a contributor on CNBC. And she's another person who I went to her website. I was looking up articles about her, and I wish that she talked more about the actual issues that she stood for. I want to know what her stance is on, things that are really important to me are like healthcare and housing. On anything. What I wanted to know what it is that drives her, what her stance is on these big issues. Maybe the fact that I have difficulty figuring out what her core issues are and what she's really going to fight for if she won that seat in Congress. Maybe that says a lot. I don't know. Congressional District 10, the most important district. Just kidding. It's not the most important district, but it's important to me because this is where I'm going to be voting. I'm sitting in Congressional District 10 recording in my bedroom right now. The incumbent Democrat in Congressional District 10 is Jerry Nadler. He served 15 years in Congress. He has 2 people running against him this primary, and those people are Lindsey Boylan and Jonathan Herzog. Now, I think that Jerry Nadler would be a very difficult Democrat to unseat because of his performance in the impeachment hearings. At least in my opinion, from looking at his record, there aren't any obvious blemishes on his record. I actually, for the most part, agree with him on policy. But I do think it's still important to look into the people running against the incumbent Democrat in your area. The idea that a freshman Democrat can't make waves and can't really affect policy is just ludicrous, because you look at the squad, you look at Ilhan Omar, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, these freshman women of color who are in Congress now. I guess that they're not going to be freshmen anymore. But obviously, new people can make waves. So let's talk about Lindsey Boylan first. Lindsey Boylan served as Deputy Secretary of Economic Development and was appointed by the governor. She's not accepting fossil fuel PAC money. She supports the Green New Deal. She was actually endorsed by a fairly well-known progressive, Abdullah Syed. When I was watching interviews with her, it seems like her driving force, the things that she cares about the most, are housing, which makes sense given the district that she is running in. There's incredible economic disparity in this district. And then she also cares a lot about mental health care. And those seem to be the two issues that are really fueling her campaign. The other person running against Jerry Nadler is Jonathan Herzog. Jonathan dropped out of Harvard Law School to join Andrew Yang's campaign. Then he left Andrew Yang's campaign to run against Nadler, and that's really reflected in his platform. He shares a lot of ideas that Yang did. He's one of the few congressional candidates that I see talking about automation and what that's going to mean for the average working American. He's a huge proponent of UBI, Universal Basic Income. Oh, and another thing that he's proposing, which I have not seen a lot of people other than, I think, on Yang's campaign talk about, is democracy dollars. So that's just a form of publicly funded elections. And it's supposed to even the playing field. So basically what that means is, for example, I might get $100 from the government and I can donate that to any candidates in local elections or the presidential election that I want. And that's supposed to start to even out some of these candidates who get large donations from corporations are not necessarily the candidates who have a lot of supporters who are low income. If you are a low income person running, I mean, that's pretty much impossible. So, I mean, obviously, my personal opinion, the eventual goal is to get money out of politics completely. But I think that having democracy dollars or publicly funded elections is a great first step. To me, it's so important that you really research your candidates, because Jerry Nadler is a really well-known name, but I definitely see these candidates, Lindsey Boylan and Jonathan Herzog, having a future in politics. And even if they don't win, I'm glad that I've done this research and know about them. Congressional District 7. It's not exactly a close race, but I think it's really interesting, and I think I learned a really good lesson from it. The incumbent in Congressional District 7 is Nydia Velázquez. She's a 14-term Latina with progressive values, and the person primarying her is Paperboy Love Prince, and they are a non-binary artist and also community organizer. They're known for the viral Yang Gang anthem.
Yang Gang, Yang Gang, President, Yang Gang, President, Yang Gang.
This was a case where I had to check myself and my own preconceived ideas of what a politician needed to be. So I looked at Paperboy Love Prince's platform, and a lot of their views, I mean, I guess you could probably guess this from the song, but a lot of their views actually reflect Andrew Yang's presidential run. I checked out their podcast, and at first I wasn't taking them seriously, and it wasn't about the name or the artist. Like, the fact that they're an artist, I can't judge. I'm literally doing the exact same thing that they were doing, just like recording stuff in my bedroom. A core part of their message was love and unity and bringing the party together with love, and I was like, this person doesn't know the system. But then one thing that they were talking about, which again was making me be all cynical, is they were talking about how a lot of politicians get into politics for self-gain, or even if they get in with the right intentions, it starts becoming about the politician and less about their constituents. And Paperboy Love Prince is a community organizer and obviously really, really cares about their community and about their district. And, I need to check myself, because maybe this is what we need to be looking for in politicians. Maybe our baseline should be, is this person in it for the right reasons? I looked into Nydia Velázquez, and I really liked her platform, but when I was looking at her voting record compared to what she said her platform was, and even some of her reasonings, like some of her explanations for things she had done on her website, I think that she has fallen short. So, for example, she says she's in favor of universal health care. She thinks that everyone should have equal access to affordable health care. And then when she writes on her website about what she has done to achieve that for her constituents, she says she has fought hard to keep the Trump administration from repealing parts of the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare. And I'm like, isn't that like the bare minimum? She wasn't even like a co-sponsor of the Medicare for All bill or anything like that. So that, you know, at the moment, as far as I know, it's not exactly a close race, but I definitely learned something from it. And I think that you should check out Paperboy Love Prince's art. If you made it this far in the video, thank you so much. Let me know if this kind of content was helpful, and if there's a candidate that I left out or I didn't say enough about. I really encourage you to comment below. Maybe we could start some sort of discussion, share information with each other. Please share this information with your friends. Encourage your friends to vote. Encourage your friends to please don't go into the voting booth blind. And if you're voting from home, it's even easier because you can have the ballot in front of you right next to your laptop and do a little search on these candidates. While we're still kind of in this semi-lockdown, I want to start making some of my own content. So yeah, let me know if you like this and if this was helpful at all. Thanks.